Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Chapter 3. Gautama. In the town of Savatthi, every child knew the name of the sublime Buddha, and every home was prepared to fill the alms bowl of Gautama's disciples, the silent supplicants. Near the town lay Gautama's favorite abode, the Jetavana grove, which the wealthy merchant Anathapindika, a devoted admirer of the Sublime One, had given him and his followers. The area was indicated by the tales and responses heard by the two young ascetics during their quest for Gautama's whereabouts. And when they arrived in Savatthi, they were offered food at the very first home where they stopped and begged, and they took the food. And Siddhartha asked the woman who served them the food, "O benevolent lady, we would like to know the whereabouts of the Buddha, the most venerable, for we are two samanas from the forest, and we have come to see him, the perfect one, and to hear the teaching from his lips." The woman said, "You have truly come to the right place, you samanas from the forest. You see, the Sublime One is in Jetavana, in Anathapindika's garden. There you pilgrims may spend the night, for it has enough room for the countless people flocking here to hear the teaching from his lips." Govinda was delighted, and joyfully he cried, "Fine, then we have reached our goal and our journey is over. But tell us, you mother of the pilgrims, do you know him, the Buddha? Have you seen him with your own eyes?" The woman said, "I have seen him many times, the Sublime One. I have seen him on many days, as he silently walked through the streets in a yellow cloak, silently held out his alms bowl at the front doors, and carried away his filled bowl." Govinda listened ecstatically and wanted to ask and hear a lot more, but Siddhartha said they would have to go on. They thanked the woman and left, and they scarcely needed to ask the way, for not a few pilgrims and monks in Gautama's fellowship were heading toward the Jetavana. And when they reached it at night, there were constant arrivals. There were words and calls from people requesting and receiving shelter. The two samanas, accustomed to living in the forest, quickly and soundlessly found a refuge and rested there until morning. At sunrise, they were amazed to see the multitude of the faithful and the curious who had spent the night here. On all paths of the glorious grove, monks in yellow cloaks were walking. They sat here and there under the trees, absorbed in contemplation or in spiritual conversation. The shady gardens looked like a city, filled with people swarming like bees. Most of the monks went into town with alms bowls to gather food for lunch, the only meal of the day. Buddha himself, the illuminated one, would also go begging in the morning. Siddhartha saw him, and he instantly recognized him as if a god had pointed him out. He saw him, a simple man in a yellow cowl, the alms bowl in his hand, as he silently walked. "Look," Siddhartha murmured to Govinda, "that is the Buddha." Attentively, Govinda peered at the monk in the yellow cowl. Nothing seemed to set him apart from the hundreds of other monks, and yet Govinda soon realized this is he, and they followed him and contemplated him. The Buddha went his way, modest and lost in thought. His silent face was neither cheerful nor woeful. He seemed to be smiling inwardly, with a calm, silent, hidden smile, not unlike a healthy child's. The Buddha walked, wearing the cloak, and setting his feet down like all his monks, according to a precise regulation. But his face and his steps, his silently lowered gaze, his silently hanging arm, and every last finger on his silently hanging hand spoke of peace, spoke of perfection, did not seek, did not imitate, breathed gently in an everlasting calm, in an everlasting light, an inviolable peace. Thus Gautama walked toward the town to gather alms, and the two samanas recognized him solely by the perfection of his calm, by the silence of his figure, in which no seeking, no wanting, no imitating, no striving were to be recognized, but only light and peace. "Today we will hear the teaching from his lips," said Govinda. Siddhartha did not respond. He was not very curious about the teaching. He did not believe it could teach him anything new. After all, he, just like Govinda, had heard the contents of the Buddha's teaching over and over, albeit from second-hand and third-hand accounts. But he peered attentively at Gautama's head, at his shoulders, at his feet, at his silently hanging hand, and it seemed as if every joint of every finger of this hand contained a teaching, as if it spoke, breathed, shone, was scented with truth. This man, this Buddha, was full of truth down to the gesture of his very last finger. This man was holy. Never had Siddhartha venerated a human being so deeply. Never had he loved a human being so deeply as this one. The two followed the Buddha to town and returned silently to the grove, for they themselves intended to consume no food that day. They saw Gautama come back, saw him take the meal in the circle of his disciples. What he ate would have sated no bird. They saw him withdraw into the shade of the mango trees. That evening, however, when the heat subsided and everyone in the camp grew lively and gathered together, they heard the Buddha teach. They heard his voice, and it too was perfect, was perfectly calm, was full of peace. Galtama taught the teaching of suffering, the origin of suffering, the path to the elimination of suffering. Calm and clear flowed his quiet speech. Suffering was life. The world was full of suffering, but deliverance from suffering had been found. Deliverance was found by taking the path of the Buddha. In a soft yet firm voice, the Sublime One spoke, teaching the four principles, teaching the eightfold path. Patiently, he went the wonted way of teaching, with examples, with repetitions, bright and still. His voice hovered over the listeners like a light, like a starry sky. When the Buddha, it was already night, finished speaking, several pilgrims stepped forward and asked to be accepted into the fellowship, took refuge with the teaching. And Gautama accepted them, saying, "You have listened well to the teaching. It is well proclaimed. Please join us and walk in holiness to put an end to all suffering." Lo, now Govinda also stepped forward, the shy youth, and said, "I too take refuge with the Sublime One and his teaching," and asked to be accepted into the fellowship of the disciples, and was accepted. Promptly thereupon, when the Buddha had retired to his nightly rest, Govinda turned to Siddhartha and eagerly said, "Siddhartha, it is not my place to reproach you. Both of us have heard the Sublime One. Both of us have listened to his teaching. Govinda has heard the teaching, and he has taken refuge with it. But you, my honored friend, do you not wish to follow the path of deliverance too? Do you wish to hesitate? Do you wish to wait?" Siddhartha, upon hearing Govinda's words, awoke as if from a dream. He gazed and gazed into Govinda's face. Then he murmured in a voice without mockery, "Govinda, my friend, you have taken the step. You have chosen the path. You have always, O Govinda, been my friend. You have always walked a step behind me. I have often wondered, will Govinda ever step alone, without me, prompted by his own soul? Look, now you have become a man and are choosing your own path. May you walk it to its end, O my friend. May you find deliverance." Govinda, who had not fully understood, repeated his question impatiently. "Please speak, my friend. Tell me, nor can it be otherwise, that you too, my learned friend, will take refuge with the Sublime Buddha." Siddhartha placed his hand on Govinda's shoulder. "You have not really heard my benediction, O Govinda. Let me repeat it. May you walk this path to its end. May you find deliverance." At that instant, Govinda realized that his friend was leaving him, and he began to weep. "Siddhartha," he exclaimed, lamenting. Siddhartha spoke gently to him. "Do not forget, Govinda, that you now belong to the samanas of the Buddha. You have renounced home and parents, renounced background and property, renounced your own will, renounced friendship. That is the will of the teaching. That is the will of the Sublime One. You have willed it yourself. Tomorrow, O Govinda, I will leave you." For a long time the friends walked through the woods. For a long time they lay and found no sleep. And Govinda kept urging his friend to tell him why he did not want to take refuge in Gautama's teaching. Tell him what failing he had found in this teaching. But each time Siddhartha waved him off and said, "Let it be, Govinda. The Sublime One's teaching is very good. How could I find a failing in it?" And at the crack of dawn, a follower of the Buddha, one of his oldest monks, walked through the garden and called all the neophytes who had found refuge in the teaching. He summoned them in order to put their yellow garments on them and to instruct them in the first teaching and duties of their rank. Govinda tore himself away, embraced the friend of his youth one last time, and joined the procession of the novices. Siddhartha, however, walked through the grove, lost in thought. Suddenly he encountered Gautama, the Sublime One, and when he greeted him in awe, and the gaze of the Buddha was so full of goodness and stillness, the youth plucked up his courage and asked the Venerable One for permission to speak to him. Silently, the Sublime One nodded his consent. Siddhartha said, "Yesterday, O Sublime One, I was granted the privilege of hearing your wondrous teaching. Together with my friend, I came from far away to hear the teaching, and now my friend will remain with your followers. He has taken refuge with you. But I am resuming my pilgrimage." "As you please," said the Venerable One politely. "All too bold are my words," Siddhartha went on, "but I would not care to leave the Sublime One without sincerely imparting my thoughts to him. Will the Venerable One lend me his ear for one moment more?" Silently, the Buddha nodded his consent. Siddhartha said, "There is one thing in your teaching, O most Venerable One, that I admire more than anything else. Everything in your teaching is perfectly clear, is proven. You show the world as a perfect chain, nowhere and never interrupted, as an eternal chain, linking causes and effects. Never has this been seen so clearly, never presented so irrefutably. Truly, the heart of every Brahmin must leap with joy in his body when he, through your teaching, sees the world as a perfect and coherent whole, unbroken, clear as crystal, independent of chance, independent of gods. Whether the world is good or evil, whether life in it is sorrow or joy, no matter. It may even be unessential. But the unity of the world, the coherent togetherness of all events, the enfolding of everything big or little in the same river, in the same law of cause and effect, of becoming and dying, all this shines brightly from your sublime teaching, O Perfect One. Yet now, according to that self-same law, this unity and consistency of all things is nevertheless interrupted in one place. Something alien, something new, is pouring through a small gap into this world of unity, something that was not here before, something that cannot be shown and proved. That gap is your teaching about the overcoming of the world, about deliverance. And that small gap, that small break, shatters and abolishes the whole eternal and unified law of the world. Please forgive me for my objection." Galtama had listened, silent and motionless. Now, in his kind, in his clear and courteous voice, the Perfect One spoke. You have heard the teaching, O Brahmin son, and good for you for pondering it so deeply. You have found a gap in it, a failing. May you continue pondering it. But be warned, you who thirst for knowledge, be warned about the thicket of opinions and the fight over words, whether beautiful or ugly, wise or foolish. Opinions are unimportant. Anyone can follow them or reject them. But the teaching that you have heard from me is not my opinion, and its goal is not to explain the world to people who thirst for knowledge. Its goal is different. Its goal is deliverance from suffering. That is what Gautama teaches, and nothing else. Please, O sublime one, do not be angry with me, said the youth. I have not spoken with you to fight with you, or to fight over words. You are truly right. Opinions are unimportant. But may I say one more thing? I have never doubted you for a moment. I have never doubted for a moment that you are the Buddha, that you have attained the goal, the highest, which so many thousands of Brahmins and sons of Brahmins are journeying to reach. You have found the deliverance from death. It came to you from your own seeking, on your own path, through thinking, through meditation, through knowledge, through illumination. It did not come through a teaching, and this is my thought, O Sublime One. No one is granted deliverance through a teaching. You cannot, O Venerable One, impart to anyone, tell anyone in words and through teachings what happened to you in the hour of your illumination. The teaching of the illuminated Buddha contains a great deal. It teaches many how to live righteously, avoid evil. But there is one thing that the so clear, so venerable teaching does not contain. It does not contain the secret of what the Sublime One himself has experienced. He alone among the hundreds of thousands. That is what I thought and realized when I heard the teaching. That is why I am resuming my wandering, not to seek a different, a better teaching, for I know there is none, but to leave all teachings and all teachers and to reach my goal alone or die. Yet, I will often think back to this day, O Sublime One, and to this hour when my eyes beheld a saint. The Buddha gazed silently at the ground. Silently, his inscrutable face radiated in perfect equanimity. May your thoughts, said the Venerable One, slowly, not be errors. May you attain the goal. But tell me, have you seen the multitude of my samanas, my many brothers, who have taken refuge in my teaching? And do you believe, stranger and samana, do you believe that all these people would be better off if they left the teaching and returned to the life of the world and of desires? Such a thought is remote from me, cried Siddhartha. May they all remain with the teaching. May they reach their goal. It is not for me to judge another man's life. I must judge, I must choose, I must spurn purely for myself alone. We samanas, O Sublime One, are seeking deliverance from the ego. Now, if I were one of your disciples, O Venerable One, I fear that my ego would find peace and deliverance only as a figment, as a delusion. I fear that my ego would actually live on and grow big, for I would have then made the teaching, made my following, made my love for you, made the fellowship of the monks into my ego. With a half smile, and with an unperturbable brightness and friendliness, Gautama gazed into the stranger's eyes and bade him goodbye with a barely visible gesture. You are clever, O Samana, said the Venerable One. You know how to speak cleverly, my friend. Beware of too much cleverness. Away walked the Buddha, and his gaze and his half-smile were etched forever in Siddhartha's memory. I've never seen anyone gaze and smile like that. Sit and stride like that, he thought. Truly, I wish I could gaze and smile, sit and stride like that, so free, so venerable, so concealed, so open, so childlike and mysterious. Truly, a man gazes and strides like that only if he has reached the innermost core of his ego. Fine. I too will try to pierce to the innermost core of my ego. I have seen one man, thought Siddhartha, one single man in front of whom I had to cast down my eyes. I will cast down my eyes in front of no one else. No one. No other teaching will entice me, since this man's teaching has not enticed me. The Buddha has robbed me, thought Siddhartha. He has robbed me, yet he has given me more. He has robbed me of my friend, who believed in me and who now believes in him. My friend, who was my shadow, and is now Gautama's shadow. But he has given me Siddhartha, has given me myself.